right, let's jump into another deep dive. This time, we're exploring some pretty intriguing articles and excerpts. Really getting into this publication called Fair Play.
Oh, interesting.
They really took aim at some official explanations of major events, especially those politically charged assassinations, the
Yeah.
ones that still get people talking.
Yeah.
JFK, Malcolm X,
Yeah. Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, even a little bit about Pearl Harbor skepticism thrown in there. But here's the thing about Fair Play
Yeah.
I find fascinating.
Yeah.
They're not just, rehashing the same old conspiracy theories.
Right.
It's more like they're trying to weave a narrative here. They're suggesting a pattern,
Yeah.
maybe of powerful institutions sort of pulling the strings behind the scenes, manipulating events, and controlling what we believe.
It really makes you think, like, why are these questions still so relevant today? Like,
Yeah.
Fair Play was actually the magazine for Citizens for Truth about the Kennedy assassination. And the print magazine, originally it was called Probe. They stopped publishing back in 2000.
Oh, really?
But get this, they're still working on an anthology, like all their best stuff, called The Assassinations Declassified.
Wow.
And their website's still up and running. So, if this stuff happened so long ago, why are they still, like, working so hard to bring it to light?
Right. And that drive to uncover the truth, it's really apparent in a letter we have here from James W. Douglas. He was a
Yeah.
contributor to Fair Play.
Okay.
And he makes this really powerful argument that America is, like, in a state of denial about the assassinations of JFK, Malcolm X, MLK Jr., and RFK. And he goes even further,
Right.
saying he believes there's a system of evil at play here.
Wow.
And we're all just kind of choosing to ignore it. Like, have we gotten too comfortable with that lone gunman theory, even when there's evidence that points in another direction?
I think Douglas would say absolutely we have. He points out that U.S. intelligence agencies were heavily involved in covert operations and assassinations abroad during the Cold War. I mean, so if those tactics were used internationally, wouldn't it be a little naive to think they couldn't happen here, on American soil?
Right.
He even uses the term benevolent fascism to describe the system that he sees at work.
Wow.
This system that, might seem good on the surface, but underneath it's driven by this ruthless pursuit of power.
That phrase, benevolent fascism, is it's really striking. It makes you think about a system that's subtly controlling, maybe even disguised as something helpful. And Douglas gets really specific with his accusations too. Like, for example, with the JFK assassination, he really emphasizes Oswald's connections to intelligence operatives,
Right.
suggesting there's a possibility of a much larger plot than what we've been led to believe.
And it doesn't stop with JFK. Douglas also argues that both Malcolm X and MLK Jr., they were both moving towards an alliance. They were both such powerful figures, and together they could have been, a real threat to those in power.
Right.
So the question becomes, could their assassinations have been a way to dismantle this potential alliance before it even had a chance to begin?
It's a chilling thought, to be honest. And Douglas asks this really important question. Is the truth overwhelmed by corruption so vast that we can't even deal with it? What do you think? Are we living in a world where the truth is so deeply buried that we can't even recognize it anymore?
It's a tough question to answer.
Yeah.
But Douglas, he doesn't want to leave us in despair. He brings up this idea of satyagraha, which is what Gandhi called truth force. It's the belief that if we live and act on truth, it can transform even the most corrupt systems. So I guess the real question is, how can we, as individuals, how can we tap into this truth force that Douglas is talking about? Can we actually make a difference against these seemingly impossible systems of power?
It's a powerful concept to consider.
Yeah.
But let's maybe shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and look at another contributor to Fair Play, Christopher Sherritt.
Yeah.
He has this really, really interesting analysis of the JFK assassination. He frames it as a coup d'etat orchestrated by the U.S. government. So the big question is why would they want Kennedy out of office?
Well, Sherritt starts by kind of taking apart the two main narratives surrounding JFK's assassination.
Okay.
The first one is that it was just the work of a small group.
Right.
Which, we've already talked about a bit.
Yeah.
And then the second narrative, which he sees as becoming more and more popular, It acknowledges that there was a cover-up, but it claims that it was done, for the good of the American people, maybe to protect Kennedy's reputation or something.
Okay.
But Sherritt doesn't buy either of those narratives. He argues that Kennedy was deliberately removed because he was seen as a threat to the existing power structure.
So it wasn't just some random act of violence or a well-intentioned cover-up. It was calculated, a move to hold on to power.
Yeah.
That's a pretty serious claim. What evidence does he have to back that up?
He digs into the historical context.
Yeah.
He highlights Kennedy's conflicts with the CIA, which, as you know, was getting increasingly powerful during the Cold War.
Right.
Sherritt actually mentions former President Truman. Truman had expressed worries that the CIA was, kind of overstepping its boundaries. He even brings up a New York Times article that was published just a month before the assassination. And this article, it openly talked about an intra-administration war that was being waged against Kennedy. And guess who the aggressor was? The CIA.
So there was real tension brewing between Kennedy and the intelligence community.
Absolutely.
But why? Why would the CIA want Kennedy gone?
Sure.
What was it about his policies or his leadership that threatened them so much?
Sherritt suggests that Kennedy was actively trying to move away from this really militaristic foreign policy.
Okay.
And this shift, it was a direct threat to the power structure that had really taken hold after World War II.
Right.
The national security state, as it's often called.
Yeah.
It relied on this constant state of conflict, this military buildup, to justify its existence.
So just to clarify for our listeners, this term national security state.
Right.
It essentially means that after World War II, there was this rise of institutions and policies that were laser focused on national security, sometimes even at the expense of individual liberties.
Absolutely.
Or democratic processes.
Yeah.
And this system, it just became so deeply entrenched in the government.
Yes. And Kennedy, with his attempts to de-escalate the Vietnam War and his pursuit of a nuclear test ban treaty, he was seen as trying to dismantle this whole system.
So it wasn't just about Kennedy himself. It was about the direction he was taking the country in.
Yeah, exactly.
A direction that was directly challenging the interests of some very powerful institutions.
Right.
That raises a really important question for us. How much control do these institutions like the CIA actually have? Are they really capable of orchestrating something as monumental as a presidential assassination?
Well, Sherritt certainly seems to think so.
Yeah.
He argues that Kennedy's death wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a strategic move to protect the interests of this national security state and to maintain its grip on power.
And he doesn't just point the finger at the government. Right. He also brings the media into it.
Oh, absolutely.
He accuses them of being handmaidens to the CIA, basically helping to control the story and shape how the public perceived the assassination. It really makes you wonder how much of what we believe about these historical events is actually true and how much has been, carefully crafted to serve specific agendas.
And that manipulation, it can be incredibly subtle.
Yeah.
Sherritt argues that Oswald's supposed connections to Marxism and Castro, those were intentionally used to frame the assassination as the work of this, lone radicalized individual. Think about it. Pinning it on a supposed leftist not only takes the heat off any potential government involvement, but it also sends this chilling message to anyone who might dare to criticize U.S. policies.
It's like saying, step out of line, and this is what could happen to you.
Exactly.
Jared even brings up the pains the couple who were friends with Oswald in Dallas.
Yeah.
Apparently they had some connections to powerful families and in the intelligence community. Could their relationship with Oswald have been more than just a coincidence?
Sherritt seems to think so. He suggests that their involvement in the assassination plot, it might have been far more significant than the official story lets on, potentially linking Oswald to a much wider network of conspirators.
It's definitely a thought-provoking analysis. It challenges us to really consider that things might not be as straightforward as they appear.
Right.
That there might be forces at play that are far more complex, maybe even sinister than we realize. And we're really just scratching the surface here. Fair play goes even deeper.
Oh, yeah.
Into specific pieces of evidence, questioning the official interpretations, pointing out inconsistencies, things that suggest a deliberate cover-up.
Yeah.
But let's maybe pause here for now.
Okay.
And we'll pick up this discussion in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to hear from someone who was actually involved in investigating the JFK assassination, someone who brings that firsthand perspective to these complex and controversial events. Going through these fair play articles, it really makes you think twice about how much we just accept the official narrative, to understand these big, complex events.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what fair play is trying to do, trying to expose, make us question everything.
Right, right.
And to kind of help us understand, how these investigations actually work, Fair Play interviewed someone who was, right in the middle of it all.
Okay.
Gaetan Fonzi. He was an investigator for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the HSCA,
Right.
which, was formed in the 70s to reinvestigate the JFK assassination.
Oh, wow. So he was, like, on the inside.
Yeah, yeah. Incredible perspective.
Yeah. So what did he learn from that experience?
Well, Fonzi really had a front row seat to how the government investigates itself. And unfortunately, he came away pretty pessimistic. Yeah. He doesn't believe that the government's truly willing to investigate itself, even with, all this new information that comes out.
Why not? You'd think they would want to, get to the bottom of things.
Right. Especially when you're talking about something as huge as a presidential assassination.
Yeah.
But Fonzi, he saw it firsthand, how these powerful institutions, they resist scrutiny. Evidence can be manipulated or it's withheld, and the truth is deliberately obscured. It's almost like, trying to solve a puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing.
Right.
And the ones that you do have, they might be fake.
So even with, like, a dedicated committee, that's supposed to be finding the truth, there are still these roadblocks.
Yeah.
What was, like, the biggest obstacle that he faced?
He talks about a lot of difficulties, but he specifically calls out Gerald Posner, the author of Case Closed.
Yeah.
That book that claims to definitively prove that Oswald acted alone, in killing JFK.
Right.
Fonzi, however, argues that the book is deeply flawed, maybe even intentionally misleading in how it handles the evidence.
That's a pretty bold statement. I mean, Case Closed it's a pretty well-known book, right? A lot of people consider that to be, like, the final word on the JFK assassination.
And that's exactly what Fonzi is challenging. He believes that the media, they often just accept these official narratives, without really questioning them. And in a way, Posner's book and media attention that it got, it became part of the problem.
Right.
It kind of reinforced the official story and shut down any further inquiry.
It's like the media almost helped cement that official narrative in the public's mind, even if that narrative was questionable.
Exactly.
So speaking of evidence, there's this specific piece of evidence that Fair Play analyzes, the Moorman photo.
Oh,
that really iconic image of the moment JFK was shot in the head.
Yeah.
Chilling. Yeah. So what are they focused on in this photo?
They zoom in on a figure in the background, someone they call #5man. And they argue that this figure can be seen on the grassy knoll,
right,
and might even be holding this long, straight object. What's interesting is that this detail has been largely ignored by official accounts.
So wait, are they saying that there's another person in that photo who could have been involved in the assassination?
Yeah.
And no one's talking about it?
Yeah. Fair Play even presents evidence from photographic experts who, without knowing the context, they identified #5man as a human figure. Despite that, this detail was left out of most of the literature about the assassination.
It's almost like someone wanted to just erase this person from history.
Right.
It's pretty disturbing. Why would this detail be suppressed?
Yeah. I mean, why ignore a detail like that, especially if it could, completely change the story? It's the big question, right? Fair Play even includes this really chilling anecdote about Wesley Liebler.
Right.
He was one of the attorneys on the Warren Commission, which was the official government investigation.
Yeah.
And when asked why certain evidence was ignored, Liebler reportedly said, because of the presumption that the emperor is clothed.
Oh.
It's like they were just assuming everything was fine, even if there was, evidence to the contrary.
Right.
They didn't even want to consider the possibility that something might be wrong.
And what about this #5man in the photo?
Oh, there's an even more unsettling anecdote about that,
Right.
about Labeler's response to that detail.
Yeah.
He apparently looked at the photo, listened to the evidence, and then said, "Mr. Marcus, sometimes we get caught up in things that are bigger than we are."
That almost sounds like a threat. You know,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder if maybe he was being pressured to look the other way.
Yeah.
If even the people tasked with investigating these events
Right.
are running into roadblocks,
Yeah.
feeling threatened, how can we ever expect to actually find the truth?
That's a question that Fair Play wants us to really wrestle with.
Yeah.
What does it mean when the people who are supposed to be finding the truth are being silenced
Right.
or intimidated?
And if we connect this back to Douglas's idea of benevolent fascism,
Right.
it paints a pretty grim picture, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does suggest a system where power is concentrated in the hands of just a few.
Yeah.
And those who question that power, they're met with, with resistance at best, maybe even danger.
It's not a very comforting thought.
It's not. And this is where Fair Play really pushes us,
Yeah.
to think critically, to consider that things might not be as straightforward as they seem, that there might be forces at play that are far more complex, far more sinister than we realize. Do we just accept the official story, or do we dig deeper, question everything, try to uncover the truth for ourselves?
And that's what fair play is really all about, right?
Right.
They're encouraging us to be active in seeking the truth,
Yeah.
not just, passively consuming whatever information is given to us.
Right.
We want us to look beyond the headlines, beyond the official reports, and really think for ourselves.
Right.
It's kind of unsettling to think that we might be living in a world where the truth is so easily manipulated.
Right. I mean, these events, these assassinations,
Yeah.
they're not ancient history.
No.
They happened within, a lot of people's lifetimes who are listening right now.
And that's what makes these fair play articles so compelling.
Right.
It's not just about some historical events, it's about questioning those systems of power that are still shaping our world today.
Right, exactly. I mean, think about it. We're constantly bombarded with information
Yeah.
from all sides, and it's becoming harder and harder to figure out what's true and
Yeah.
what's not.
Especially with social media,
Yeah.
and the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like everybody has a platform now. Everybody has an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so easy to just, get lost in all that noise.
It really is. So how do we even begin to navigate this information overload?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where critical thinking comes in.
Right.
Fair play. They're not saying to just, blindly accept all their theories,
Right.
but they are encouraging us to really develop this healthy skepticism,
Yeah.
towards official explanations, to ask questions, to look for things that don't add up,
Yeah.
to consider different perspectives.
So it's not about being paranoid
Right.
or distrusting everything, right?
well.
It's more about being more thoughtful.
Yeah. Discerning
Yeah.
about the information that we take in.
Exactly. It's about having those tools
Yeah.
to assess information, to weigh the evidence, and to come to our own conclusions.
And those skills are valuable no matter what,
Yeah.
Not just when we're trying to figure out some historical mystery.
It's like that saying, trust but verify.
Right. Exactly.
We can't just, take things at face value.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to dig a little deeper,
Mm-hmm.
to look beyond the surface.
And sometimes that means questioning the narratives that make us feel comfortable,
Yeah.
the stories that we've always been told. And it can be kind of unsettling to realize that things might not be as clear cut as we thought.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like when you were talking about the Moorman photo before. I mean, I've seen that picture countless times, and I never noticed that that hashtag 5man
It's easy to miss.
makes you wonder what else we're all missing. you know?
Yeah. What other details are being overlooked or maybe even deliberately hidden?
Right. And that's a pretty humbling thought. It speaks to the power of whoever's controlling the narrative.
Right. They decide what we see, what we focus on,
Yeah.
and ultimately what we believe.
So if we kind of go back to that central question that runs through all these fair play articles,
Mm-hmm.
if these events were orchestrated, covered up, manipulated in the ways that they're suggesting, what does that say about the world that we're living in?
It raises some really fundamental questions about who's really in charge,
Yeah.
how that power is being used,
Yeah.
and who benefits from this manipulation of information.
Hmm.
It challenges us to consider that, maybe the world isn't as just or equitable as we want to believe.
It's a heavy thought, but it's also a call to action.
Yeah.
If we want to live in a world where the truth actually wins out,
Right.
where justice is served,
hmm
we can't just, sit back and passively accept the stories that they're feeding us.
No, we have to be active,
Yeah.
in the pursuit of truth. We have to
Yeah.
be willing to question, to challenge, to demand accountability.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into fair play, I I think the biggest takeaway here is be skeptical, be curious, and never stop questioning.
I like that. The pursuit of truth is a journey,
Yeah.
and it's one that we're all on together.
And remember, sometimes the most important questions are the ones that make us uncomfortable,
Right?
the ones that challenge our assumptions,
Yeah.
and force us to confront some uncomfortable realities, because it's in those moments, right,
Yeah.
where we're most likely to discover something truly meaningful.
Well said.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, we really encourage you to check out Fair Play for yourselves.
Yeah.
Explore the articles, dig into the evidence, and come to your own conclusions.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking that truth.